Welcome to Dealmakers Conversations. In our first segment today, Hugh Cathey, CEO of Cathey. We hope you enjoy this. Hi, I'm here with Hugh Cathey, serial entrepreneur, investor, currently chairman and CEO of Cathey. Hugh, I want to thank you for joining us here at the Dealmakers Conference.
Oh, thanks, Dustin. I look forward to it every year.
No, we appreciate you being part of this and helping us think these things through. So, you've been both a C-suite executive and an investor, as well as many other things over the years. From those two vantage points, what are some good ways that people should think about identifying strong investment opportunities?
And we've talked about this in the past, but the number one thing is the leadership team. I see it more and more all the time now, that the quality of the leadership, the energy of the leadership, their willingness to just persevere is really critically important. And of course, in the last 6 months or so, we've seen how important that is in many cases. So leadership is certainly key. And then I kind of drop right down to size of the market, something that has an ability to spread near and far in terms of product or service or whatever their model is. And then the other that I always look for is some level of intellectual property, something that's going to create value on beyond just a regular revenue or EBITDA multiple in terms of the valuation. As far as industry verticals, just everything is attractive right now. I was actually out just yesterday with a local company that's an old line manufacturing company, been around for actually 50 years, sold out, and the new owners have come in and taken the core product and they have applied a new marketing medium to this old line product, and they're seeing some really interesting success. So it's kind of fun.
It's an interesting time for sure. Some things that are unexpected are happening that people had never even thought about before, which is a good thing. So let me ask you this. What's the most critical action an executive should be taking in this environment to assure that his or her company is adapting properly and identifying continued opportunities to keep growing? Because if you're not growing, you're sliding backwards.
It's, again, interesting that we'd be having this conversation today. Earlier today, I was talking on a Zoom call with a colleague in Houston, and he was talking about how through the last 6 months, the first month, he was really worried about his business and what was going to happen to it. And he had a bit of an epiphany at the end of that first month of the COVID environment. And he kind of realized that I can't control what's happening around me. I can only control how I respond to it. This company does a lot of executive coaching for, I'd say, Fortune 2000 level companies. So they have taken a different approach and going into their large clients and helping those clients adjust to dealing in the era of COVID and look for opportunities. Certainly, battening down the hatches in terms of cash conservation and the normal things, but start looking for ways that they can actually capitalize on people being easier to reach, as an example. My experience has been in the last 6 months that anybody I want to reach out to is really interested in talking because people are, feeling kind of cooped up. So getting through this period is one of, certainly looking at your product or service development, identifying how it matches up with this new social environment that we're in. I tend to think in those terms along the lines of companies that are IT focused or, social science focused. But I think that those companies can survive if they take a whole different approach, that I can't change this, so I need to learn how to adapt to it.
Yeah, it's like the stages of grief. Once you get past the first couple, you start thinking about what am I going to do?
Exactly.
It seems past the shock and awe already.
Exactly. Very much so.
Yeah. Let me ask this, taking a look at the overall state of the M&A market and the M&A industry right now, where do you see things at? Are deals starting to get done faster? Have people adapted to the due diligence component where maybe they can't kick the tires in person? And are there certain sectors you're seeing that are doing better?
It's interesting. If I had bet prior to this starting how it was going to go, I would have lost my bet on several different levels. I'm involved with a company that's in the information technology support space, and we have done 3 acquisitions this year. First was in January, second was in March, and the third we're just completing. And I have been astonished at how quickly, and they're all private equity backed, I have been astonished at how quickly we came together on price, terms, and and getting the deal done. It's just absolutely surprised me. However, these are all acquisitions where there is solid EBITDA history, and that the leverage of EBITDA to the debt being taken on from private equity is manageable in that 2 to 3x multiple. But given that, I've been really pleasantly surprised how quickly transactions have come together. Due diligence has been, probably the same level as in the past. Maybe it's just that people have more time. Maybe people have less distractions in the course of a normal day, and maybe more work is getting done faster. It could be no more complex than that, but I have not seen any slowdown.
That's good to hear. What about access to capital? Are you seeing that the capital flow has changed a little bit? I mean, even in the best of times, cash is king.
Yeah.
And people need to think about their balance sheet management. What are you seeing out there? Is more capital flowing or not?
Yeah, there does. I wouldn't say it's a significantly greater amount of capital flowing, but what I am seeing is that you mentioned liquidity. The ability, and I would translate that to leverageability, and that is that if the companies that are out there that are looking to make acquisitions and they're doing it utilizing debt through private equity as opposed to cash or stock, that if they can just simply demonstrate good leverageability on the ratio of the debt they incur to the EBITDA or earnings of the companies that they're acquiring. And as I said a moment ago, I've just been really surprised that when you demonstrate that leverageability, local private equity folks have come to the table real quickly. I love it. I'm not quite sure I totally can explain it, but I'm taking advantage of it.
Do what we can, right?
Yeah.
Enjoy it while we can. Let me ask this then. You mentioned you've been able to close a couple deals this year, even during COVID.
Yeah.
Were there any new roadblocks or any significant changes that you had noticed while you were going through that deal that were different than pre-COVID, or that you expect to change back after COVID?
Yeah, changing back after COVID is still a big question mark, I think, in everybody's mind. As far as creating obstacles to transactions, each of these acquisitions were heavily weighted in terms of numbers of employees as a component of their expense base. So I think that I believe what I was seeing is that we had a pretty easy time holding on to the employees of the companies we acquired. I mean, in deals I'm involved with, we always focus on that. But I got a real sense that people were not going to use their company being acquired as a reason to go out and look for something else. And in the IT space, your product is people for the most part. So it wasn't an obstacle by any stretch of the imagination, but it was actually a good thing to see. But I have not seen, actually, let me take that back. I have seen one situation that I was involved with, and we're looking at a company that does a lot of their business in a bricks and mortar environment. And we definitely had some issues. We paid for that company. We acquired that company, and it was a combination of cash and debt. And there were some concerns from the debt provider about the implications or ramifications of having such a bricks and mortar presence. We got through it, but there were a lot more questions about that than there normally would be, but no obstacles that have stopped any deals from happening.
That's good to hear. Let me ask this about people you've seen in terms of raising capital.
Right.
Have you seen that there's been a different focus on various, what would have been traditional fundamentals for people who are raising capital? Are they being asked to look at different components than they might have?
You know, I don't really see different components. There's a couple of things that I am seeing that there's maybe more focus on. One is in looking at acquiring companies, the company that is being acquired having contractual relationships with their customers seems to be of even greater importance than it would have been maybe a year ago. Naturally, you and I would always, in doing a deal, we would always be looking for acquired companies' customers to have contractual relationships. But I've seen that as a big push. And I believe that the reasoning behind it is that they're on the side of the people providing the capital, the debt provider or equity provider, they're just concerned about loss of customers in the acquired company due to not being able to handle implications of COVID. And that's probably about all I've seen in that regard.
So let's put on our prognostications hats. I'm going to ask you to kind of look forward into the future, end of 2020 and into 2021. What trends that you're currently seeing do you think are going to manifest themselves into next year in the deal making space?
Yeah. So one thing that I would say is that enabling technology, we and the people that I work with, we were always excited about enabling technology. But I think it has really brought on a new vision for the debt providers that I work with, in that companies that can, well, let me back up a little bit. I think that what we've seen in the last 6 months is that video conferencing, telemedicine, all of these areas that capitalize on distant contact have just exploded, just crazy. So I think that as I'm talking with the providers of capital, or whether I'm thinking about capital of my own that I'm going to invest, I'm really key on the target companies working in or developing or enhancing enabling technology. We're going to go way beyond video conferencing, 2 years from now. There's just a host of things that are in the works in technology companies to enable, better communications. So if I was going to bet on what I'm going to be focused on this time next year, stronger than I am today, it's going to be companies that have unique enabling technologies that are easy to take to market.
It's a lot to think about, and certainly exciting times coming out of some dark times. So Hugh, I want to thank you for sitting down with us here at the Dealmakers Conference.
Great. Well, thanks for all that you do for the business community, Dustin.
Thank you. You're very welcome. Thank you.
All right.
We hope you enjoyed that interview with Hugh Cathey. As a serial entrepreneur, he's got a lot to say. Next up, Denise DeLong of Singleton Construction. We hope you enjoy. I'm here with Denise DeLong of Singleton Construction. Denise, thanks for joining us here at Dealmakers.
Thank you for having me.
Excellent, thanks. Denise, you acquired the company from your mother back in 2006. What was that transition process like, and what lessons did you learn from it that you've been able to apply down the road for your children, that's third generation of the company, to be able to take a more active role in the business?
Well, I hope that my children don't have to experience what I had to experience. I don't know that I would want anybody to do that, but my beginning at Singleton was a little unusual. My mother became sick. And so when I decided to come in and help her, she was already backing out of the business. And as a result, I don't want to say thrown into, because I don't mean that to be a negative thing, but I basically, got thrown into it. But at that time, I was really the first W-2 employee, as well as that we had one construction project going on at a time. So when you think about the complexity of the business, it was much less complex then than what it is now. Lessons learned, there's been many over the last 14 years. I'm excited about where my son is starting, and now he's actually been in the business for 7 years, started when he was 17 years old, but we have a lot of young people working in our organization, and the platform, I always tell them, you've got 30 more years, 35 more years, and where can you take this company? It's from me starting with first employee to where they're starting now. They have a fantastic opportunity in front of them.
That's fantastic. You said that they've been in there for 7 years. One of your children has been?
Yes, I have two boys, and I went down this path, and I said I don't want both of them in the business, because I've done a lot of work researching family businesses, and you hear so many horror stories, and I really didn't want my two sons to have problems by working in the business. And so I had one of my son involved with Singleton, and once I knew he wanted to be involved, we have encouraged my other son to not participate in the business, just so that we don't have problems, or they don't have problems, I should say.
Interesting. Let me ask this: how has COVID impacted Singleton construction? Have you seen an increase or a decrease in business over the past 6 months?
We've seen a decrease with us. We're very fortunate that a lot of our customers were considered essential businesses, and so they continued with their construction. But what also happened, where there are so many changes in retail driven by, nobody could have anticipated this. And so there are a lot of changes that are happening as a result of the lessons they learn. So there's a lot of the programs are stalling, slowing down. We're expecting a really big year for 2021, but once they get through, because what happens with construction is, to modify plans, you have to go through planning, architecture, permitting, et cetera. So there's a period where everything slows down, but we're anticipating that to increase next year. Now, we did see where we had gotten qualified with new customers, where those had slowed down just because they don't have the demand right now. So they don't want to bring on new general contractors. So some of our newer opportunities are slowing down. But again, it's just going to be a matter of time before that picks up again.
That makes sense. Let me ask this, though. Has it caused you to rethink the business strategy or an expansion plan or any of your operational processes?
Well, we're debt free, and there's been 2 times in my career where I've seen significant changes, not as significant as COVID, but seen significant changes happen really quickly. And as a result, I've been very conservative with the business. And so that allows you to weather storms. But I was looking at building a building for the first time. And that I started to rethink that, of course. And then even, we have been challenged with diversifying our business and knowing that we have to do that, but now recognizing that we really need to spend a lot more time on that, because we don't want to be reliant on an industry. We don't want to be as heavy in retail. We've dabbled with restaurants. That's one of the areas that we're pushing harder at. But yeah, just to diversify, and obviously to continue to be conservative, because now we know that we can't control things, but now I think this was a lesson. We have no control in this world.
Yeah, no, that makes it's been tough for a lot of some of these industries, specifically retail, apparel, restaurant, for example, among your client base.
Yeah.
Has that caused you to rethink your go forward plans and different industries that maybe you could go after?
Yeah, and that's part of it. But one of the other things I want to bring up is that we were really fortunate that we were able to collect all of our receivables. But I have a large network of general contractors that I keep in touch with across the country. And a lot of them were working with local restaurants and other customers that they're not getting paid. I have one of my friends out in California that had $5 million in receivables that he wasn't able to collect. So we were really fortunate that we were able to collect all of our receivables. But I have always had a strategy of going after big brands, big names. And I was starting to want to do some more work outside of that. But now I catch myself being fearful again and saying, well, do I really want to make sure I stick with these large corporations, large brands, and not get involved in some of the smaller construction opportunities, whether it be a local restaurant or so I think it's causing me, I felt like I was getting more confidence to push forward for different opportunities. And now I see myself pulling back again, kind of similar during the recession. We saw so many people that struggled with, receivables, and with construction, you get a $2, $3, $4 million project and you can't collect your receivables. It's a really bad thing.
No, definitely. I noticed you applied for and received PPP money during the crisis. What was that process like? And what did it mean for your organization?
Well, the process, just because, everybody knows it got passed so quickly that there was a lot of uncertainty. There was a lot of people trying to figure out what are the rules going to be. They changed many times. There was at one point I was going to give the money back, and I talked to my accountant and said that I based on some of these changes, I don't even want to accept this money, but we ended up keeping it. And, there is one change that they made, not allowing it to be tax deductible, that those expenses tax deductible. So it kind of lowered the value, almost 40%. But the process itself, I think that, my bank, we have a regional bank up in Michigan, and I think they did an amazing job at helping us get those funds. So that worked really well. The things that were bumpy were not within their control. It was really helpful for us just because we had a stall. Granted, we did have customer activity continue through we've had people traveling the country through this whole process, believe it or not. In some cases, our folks were the only people at hotels. But we did have programs that get pushed. And so there was like a 3-month period there where we saw a lot of stalling. And so it allowed us to, keep employees, on roll and really allow us to navigate through that period of time.
No, that's good to hear. What changes that may have occurred this year because of what's happened do you think are going to impact the way that you do business in 2021 and beyond?
I think that, like I mentioned, the diversification, really focusing on, what does our, business development strategy need to be, and how aggressively do we try to diversify that? I think also I mentioned, the whole funding thing, and how conservative are we going to continue to be, moving forward? And there was we're talking about getting involved with some local work. And again, when you start down that path, those are all newer relationships. And so I believe what's going to end up happening is that we're going to continue to drive forward with some of these big names, these big brands. And the ones that we feel like are doing really well through this crisis, that have really addressed digital and online and pickup, et cetera, and try to focus on the people that we feel are going to be successful through this change.
No, that's good. And this has been a huge transformation year for a lot of companies that are going to be able to come out the other side. So it's great to hear that you've begun to think about how those things are going to impact the business and move forward. Taking a step back a little bit, what do you think the market outlook for the construction industry is, and your opportunities for growth over the next 12 to 18 months?
Our opportunities are significant. And part of that is my strategy has been to stay focused on remodel. We do new stores, we do them in existing spaces. So it's all about modifying spaces. And so if you think about what's going on in anything that's brick and mortar, it's about change. And that change requires construction. So based on that, our outlook is really positive. I mentioned the delay, but that's, again, part of people trying to address what's going on. So I feel like it's very positive, and I feel like we're going to have a lot more opportunities than we're going to have the labor to do. That's one of our big constraints on growing, is the labor. As you hear that from many industries, but it's the labor that's available in the construction industry. Now, we were able to capture some people through this process. We continued to, which is the other thing the PPP loan helped, was we continued to recruit. and hire new employees. So that was also I wouldn't have been able to do that if I didn't have the promise of those funds. But yeah, our opportunities are going to be, I don't want to say endless, but there's so much opportunity for us.
That's great to hear. Tough industry with this year, but certainly sounds like you've been able to come out the other side and position yourself for growth in the future. Denise, thank you so much for joining us here at the Dealmakers Conference.
Thank you for having me.
We hope you enjoyed that interview with Denise. We'll see you back here in an hour for our next segment of Dealmakers Conversations.